View literature beyond the diction and read into the significance of a piece. The piece My First Erotic Feeling by Anais Nin, as part of her collection, Diaries of Anais Nin, is explicit in nature. Sexual scenarios are detailed without hesitation. However, to appreciate the significance of a work, one must read beyond the diction and understand the purpose of the words, and the meaning the diction gives to the piece. Arguably, this reading is well suited for an advanced placement literature class, acting as an intro into types of readings college freshmen may be exposed to throughout their college career. In order to look beyond the language used by Nin, the form of the work must be acknowledged, along with the usage of realism and the presence of advice and wise words throughout the piece. The excerpt is written as a diary. This is apparent due to the obvious date marks separating each journal entry. However, the diary form is seen within the thought patterns exposed in the writings as well. Because of the nature of the piece, it often changes time frames abruptly, and the sentences are written mimicking the way people think and speak inwardly to oneself on a day-to-day basis. Nin often uses parentheses to add a side note to her train of thought. When one speaks about situations they are familiar with and have experienced personally, they leave out pertinent detail for one that hasn't experienced the scenario to fully understand what is occurring. This form of writing is more challenging to read but contributes to the ethos of the piece, as the audience realizes the work is an actual excerpt from a diary. The occurrences within the piece and the diction used to describe these occurrences is raw. The emotional rawness and unembellished nature of the piece allows the audience to experience Nin's sexual experiences with her and with no sense of boundary. Nin described her sexual experiences with her husband, Hugo, as inert and passive. She would even turn away her mouth so that he would not kiss her. At moments like this, she hated him. The unvarnished nature of the situations described brings a great deal of emotion to the reader. Nin successfully allows the reader to live her experience, to hate her husband as well for making her his little slave, as he has sex with a woman who evidently does not want it to occur, and equates the experience to having been murdered rather than an act of life. Each explicit detail of each sexual experience with Nin's husband and various other lovers enables the audience to grasp the unhealthy nature of her marriage. Without the form of a diary, the piece loses a major source of significance. The audience becomes empathetic to the situation and more understanding to Nin's unfaithfulness to her husband because they too have encountered the sexual displeasure and forcefulness brought upon by Hugo, her husband. When looking beyond the diction of the sexual experience described and into the emotional displeasure that is being experienced, a form of compassion for the piece is reached. The emotional rawness of the piece contributes not only to the form of the excerpt, but also to the theory of realism expressed throughout the piece. Realism is the portrayal of a piece of literature in its truest form, meaning that everyday thoughts, actions, and experiences are described and unembellished, despite the gruff nature that may be exposed. Realism is intertwined in every aspect of Nin's excerpt. Nin was not afraid to uncover sexual issues that she was experiencing within her life, issues that many other people face in reality. On Nin's wedding night, and for weeks after her wedding night, Nin felt an inner struggle that her husband did not love her, did not desire her, because he wasn't able to satisfy her sexual needs, and other times she would not be able to sexually arouse him. This is an issue that Nin felt alone in, but was not. It is an issue that others have faced in their daily lives. Through the excerpt, Nin brings light to an idea that is not widely accepted in the 1940s. Perhaps this is one of the vast reasons why the piece was not published until 1966. The issue of women's sexuality. She brings attention to the reality that women have sex. In fact, Nin also writes in her piece, "The diary's condition of life is secrecy. It was born out of timidity. I lack the audacity of the artist working in daylight. I write my stories in the morning, my diary at night. Secrecy produced this truth, and each day I grow farther away from my feminine reflection and nearer to art, to objectivity. Nin in this excerpt describes her embarrassment to write her diary during the day due to the content that was being revealed. Her sexuality made her uncomfortable. In many ways, reading this excerpt might make some readers feel uncomfortable, especially being high school students, such as yourselves. But sexuality is a natural part of reality. As Nin increasingly wrote about her sexuality, she grew further away from feminine reflection, just as society has become more comfortable with women's sexuality over the decades, and high school students can become comfortable with their sexuality through speaking about the topic. Nin's work goes beyond sexuality. Although the diction used is explicit, when looking beyond the words, there is a great deal of advice that can be crucial to life. One of the arguably most moving passages in the piece is, "When you are in love, you love every part of the body. When you are not in love, there is always a part of the body you want to push away. When you are in love, after the desire is satisfied, you still love the body of the beloved. When you are not in love, you want to push it away." This quote is moving, the piece of advice that is powerful and indescribable, something that can be drawn on in times of need. While reading the passage, look for meaning rather than words. Feel emotion through the choice of diction, and allow the significance of the passage to create empathy. That is the art of literature.